Okay, in this video we're going to talk about general use and operation of the bandsaw, focusing really on health and safety and in some cases accuracy. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about first is we've got a couple of manufacturing aids, I suppose, that help us to use this for particular tasks. Okay, now what I see a lot with students when they're working is they want to cut a line that is parallel to a datum edge. A datum edge obviously being a flat edge like this, okay? And what they'll do is they'll mark this out, and they might use a ruler and mark 2 points and get a straight line. Or if it's got a datum edge, this one hasn't, but if it's got a datum edge, they might use a tri-square or something to get a straight line on the edge, okay? And they mark this out, okay? Now obviously, it's useful to have a point for where you're going to cut to, but if you have a bandsaw with a fence, it's much better to use the fence like this and rely, providing this is set at 90 degrees obviously and it's been checked and maintained, it's better to rely on that rather than your own markings, because what you might find is when you come to cut against the fence like this and you run it against the fence, you might find your line is a fraction out. Depends how accurate you are in terms of your marking out. Okay. Now the other production aid that you've got, or manufacturing aid that you've got, obviously is on this case we've got a mitre sled. Okay. I'm not going to kind of use this, but it works effectively very similar to the fence here. Okay. What we do is turn this round to the degree or the angle that we wish. Make sure it's locked off here with a handle, and then what we can do again, we would need to have this as a datum edge. It needs to be flat, okay, and then we can run this through the saw, pass it through the saw, and then we can cut at 45 degrees. So I'm just going to do a quick pass with the mitre sled, okay. What we'd probably want again obviously is some sort of point marked on here. We can rely on this, providing this has been checked and it's been maintained, that the angle that we set it to is going to be right. So we're going to do a quick cut like this, and then we're going to have a go with the fence as well. So before we start using the bandsaw, okay, a couple of health and safety pointers. Now at the moment this blade, the blade guard here is far too high above the material like this. Okay, what we want to do is use the handle effectively and lower the blade guard down, so we're looking at around about sort of 3 to 5 millimeters above the blade like that. That is all we need, because in the worst case situation, if we slip, we don't want our fingers to be going underneath that blade guard and allowing our fingers to touch the blade. Okay, what you'll also see is when I'm pushing the work through, there is a habit, I think, of some people to hold wood like this, or to hold things like this with their thumbs outstretched. It's probably because you're used to catching things and you know, using tools in that way. It's not a good idea, because if your thumb is sticking out like this, it's very easy to pass wood through like this, and if you're being particularly bad, you could lose your thumb. So we always tuck our thumbs in, okay? And the other rule here effectively is when we're passing wood through like this, we never get our fingers you know, anywhere near that blade either. If we do have to get quite close, this is when we might use 1 or 2 push sticks to kind of support the wood. So what I'd be doing with my thumb tucked in with one hand supporting like this, I'd be pushing with the push stick like this. You might have to turn it one side or another to get it to close to the blade, but that is what we want to do. What we don't want is our fingers passing through and getting really close to the blade like this, okay, because it's going to be particularly dangerous. So the other thing, when we're talking about turning on the machine, okay, we have to make sure that in this particular case we've got extraction, and you can see we've got a key which obviously isolates the machine as well. So if this machine was off, it should be isolated, ideally with the key out and in a locked box somewhere, okay, but we're going to turn it on first like this. Okay, we're going to make sure that our extraction is turned on. You can hear it whirring up. Here's our extraction here. Again, we're going to have this quite close, which is going to allow the wood to pass under, but obviously suck up any debris, any sawdust that's produced from the cut, and then we can use the green button to start the cut. So I'm going to start my cut just with the mitre sled first. The last thing obviously you'll notice before I start is I'm wearing PPE, so I've got, in my case, goggles on to protect my eyes. I would suggest probably, I'm only doing this for the purpose of the video so you can hear me, but an eye shield is a better option, okay? And you'll notice my lanyard here is tucked down, so you might find you've got a lanyard that needs to be tucked away, or a tie, or if you've got long hair it should be tied up and away from the saw, because it could be an entanglement issue there as well, okay? So, with my datum set, I'm going to hold the wood over here. I could, if I wish, support with the push stick over this side as well, or I could, if I'm sure, hold this firmly against the mitre sled. Obviously this is key to keep this secure, so that's what I want to be doing. I'm just going to use to my mark there, get it close to the blade like this, and just pass through at a decent speed for the cut. So there's my first cut, okay? Now, the temptation here is to reach behind the saw and collect bits of wood out. I don't want anyone to do this. What we're going to do is turn the machine off. We're going to wait for the blade to completely stop, okay? A running blade cannot be seen that it is running because it's running so fast it blurs, you don't know that it's moving, okay? So we always wait for the sound to stop and the blade to be completely still before we do anything, okay? You can then use the push stick to poke any wood out. I'm going to raise that just up a little bit so I can poke it through like this, and then take it from the back of the machine to discard it and obviously keep our table clean, okay? The other temptation as well is if you've got sawdust is to get your hand and rub the sawdust off the surface like this. That's not a good idea either, because if you've got sharp pieces of swarf, someone might have been cutting acrylic or metal or something on this blade, you don't know what blade has been put in before, that will embed into your hand and cause you problems as well. So we don't do this. If we're going to sweep it, we would use a brush or something suitable like that. So that's the mitre sled. We're going to take that off, and we're going to talk about our other kind of manufacturing aid here, the fence of the table here as well. So once again, I'm going to just bring my fence in. It's quite high, so I'm going to have to adjust my extraction so that I can get it close to where I'm cutting. Now you'll notice I've marked my line and I've put these little sort of angled marks on here. This is indicating the waste side of the cut. So what I'm doing there by marking that is I'm making sure that the blade, the width of the blade, is going to cut on this side because this is the piece of material I want, okay? And we can see as I cut this through, I know this is set at 90 degrees and I can lock it off at the back here so it doesn't move. And I can see how accurate my line is. Hopefully if I've marked it out, it should follow the line precisely as well. But again, we're doubling up on actions. If we're sure that this is accurate, we don't really have to mark a full line and go to the trouble of checking it square, because this should be square. Okay, so again, I'm just going to lower my blade guard down just a little bit so I can pass the wood under, and there's about a 3 to 5 mil gap like this. I'm going to turn my extraction on first. Obviously we're setting the extraction so it's going to pick up any dust as it passes through, and then turn my machine on. This time I'm going to be using the push stick to kind of support me as I'm pushing it through. There we go. And once again I turn the machine off, I wait for the blade to completely stop. I can turn the extraction off as well because it's quite noisy in the background, and when I know it's completely stopped, then I can recover my wood from the thing. And as you can see, my line looks pretty accurate, okay? That's good. It shows that I can measure accurately as well. Now, the last thing I'm going to talk about is obviously sometimes you want to do some curved cuts on this blade as well, okay? So I might just raise this up just a little bit more so I can see accurately what I'm cutting. Again, what I want to probably do with my curve is to make sure that I don't do anything wrong. I'm going to mark the waste side of the line when I'm cutting like this, okay, to indicate which side I'm cutting the blade on. So the blade is going to go this side of the line and not over the line in any way there, because it would ruin my measurements, okay? In this case, I'm going to be kind of moving the blade as I go, so I'll probably use it with my hands, with my fingers tucked as before, to kind of guide it through, and then when I get close to the end, I might adopt the push stick just for the last bit of the cut, okay? Now, one other little rule of thumb that we'll talk about, I'm not going to, well, we'll have a go at this as well, but this is a very gradual radius. It's a very gradual radius that I'm going to try and cut here. If we did try and cut something that was a very tight radius, what we'll probably find is the blade will not do it, okay? Now, if we look at the blade from the side, here, this width of the blade there, and obviously depending on the curve of the blade, kind of how wide it is and stuff like there, it's going to restrict the cut. So we don't ever want a radius tight like this, because the blade width there will not allow it to turn, okay? It's a simple principle that cannot go into a smaller shape just by the law of physics, okay? What we're going to do is do this wrongly, because what you'll also notice is you'll hear the blade telling you that it's wrong, okay? So I'm just going to try and demonstrate this poor operation of the bandsaw so you can kind of hear what I'm talking about. Extraction goes on, we turn the machine on. Now, listen. Did you hear the sound change there? We've got a very sharp blade here, but you can hear it labouring, okay? It's finding it hard, and you can actually see the blade is bending in the side. If this happens, this is particularly dangerous. The band could snap, and it will be the shock of your life, okay? So we want to make sure we don't do this. I'm just going to pass this through. okay, to get through this and isolate the machine. Okay. Wait for it to stop again before we take anything on, and you can see the kind of residue on the wood there. It started to burn the wood and stuff like that, and mark the wood up. So we don't want that either in terms of quality. Okay. Now you notice the other thing I didn't do as I was passing it through and it got stuck is I didn't panic. Okay. People have a tendency to panic when things aren't quite going right, and they think, oh right, I better keep pushing it through, or I have to sort of pull it backwards or whatever. If it's passing through this way, we never pull it back, okay? This is something that could be particularly dangerous because it could be stuck in at an angle and then you're trying to pull it out in the face of the blade, and we don't ever have to rush. If you're getting concerned with this, we can just take our hands off, we can stop or isolate the machine, and we can wait. Also, when we're cutting, as we get to a point, if we want to just kind of stop for a second and reassess and reposition our hands into a safe position, we can do that as well. Okay, so I'm just going to do one more cut, being a little bit more safe with the curve here. Okay, and I'm going to switch to the push stick as we get close to the end. Okay, so here a little bit more precision is what we're aiming for. Again, I'm on the side of the waist here. Trying to push through at sort of a controlled speed, but again, if I get to that point where I'm a bit like, oh, I don't know, I can just stop. The blade's not cutting anymore, it's fine. I can reposition my hands, I can get the push stick in if I need, that's not a problem. I'll continue cutting. Just using the push stick now to support my cut. Makes it a little bit easier for me to mark through. There we go, and we've got a fairly smooth cut. Okay, wait for the blade to stop completely before we move through. This is another good tip. Obviously, never leave a machine running if you're going to leave the machine as well, because as we said, the blade kind of becomes invisible when it's moving, so you don't know if it's moving or not. Now, there's one last thing I'm going to talk about. Okay, I talked about the fact that you can't really, you know, cut tight radii. Okay. And also cutting something like this might be particularly difficult, okay? How do we do that with a bandsaw, okay? Very, very difficult, okay? The other thing that you can do as you're cutting is do it in a series of cuts. So I'm just going to start the machine again. And what we can do with something like this is do a cut. Okay, this is the only situation where I might just take it back like this, and I can do some other cuts like this. Trying to make sure that my lines are parallel, try not to touch the wood on the side of the blade. And as you can see, I'm taking out the material, which can then be abraded to kind of improve the finish, okay? If you did have a slightly larger section, so if I wanted to cut out something like this, for example, what I might do is kind of cut down a line like this, and then come in from the side over here. I might just use a push stick with this because it's quite close. Slowly, gently turning the blade until it comes to the point. Like that, taking a piece out. Okay, if I do need to remove a little bit, I can do that with some sort of push stick or with a waste piece of material like that to push it back if I'm still cutting. Okay, and I can come maybe from the other side, like this now. Now I can get much flatter on the blade. So I'm not asking it to do anything difficult like this to get to the other corner, like this. Shouldn't have pulled it out there, I should have taken my time, but I'm just doing this for the purpose of the video. There we go, and as you can see now I can do one more flat cut to take off that last thing. So there we have it. That's a bit of an introduction into using the fence, the mitre sled, but also the safe operation of the bandsaw with a few little tricks and tips thrown in there as well.